December 12th, 2016. The internet stopped. It wasn't a war. It wasn't a political scandal. It was a color. A single, orange, square. No text, no explanation. Just a cryptic tile posted simultaneously by the most beautiful women on the planet. It stopped the scroll. It created a mystery. And within 24 hours, it created a movement. They sold us a dream. Fyre Festival. 2 weekends on a private island in the Bahamas, once owned by Pablo Escobar. It promised music. It promised luxury villas. It promised status. Tickets cost up to $12,000. VIP packages went for $250,000. And people paid it. Instantly. They weren't buying a concert ticket. They were buying social currency. They were buying the right to say, I was there. But when the influencers arrived, the dream was a nightmare. There were no luxury villas. There were disaster relief tents. There was no gourmet food. There was a cheese sandwich. There was no security, no electricity, no water. Just chaos, stranded on a rock in the middle of the ocean. It was Lord of the Flies for the Instagram generation. How did a 25-year-old entrepreneur convince the world to buy a hallucination? Was it just incompetence? Or was it the greatest fraud of the digital age? Welcome to Dark Focus. And this is the story of the greatest party that never happened. To understand the island, we must understand the card. Before Fyre, there was Magnises. In 2013, Billy McFarland was a college dropout living in the West Village. He wasn't a tech genius like Zuckerberg. He was a social engineer. He noticed something about New York millennials. They didn't care about APR rates or rewards points. They cared about weight. So he created Magnises. It wasn't a bank card, it was a club card. He essentially took a regular debit card and glued a heavy piece of metal onto it. It made a satisfying clunk sound when you dropped it on the table. And for a 20-something in New York, that sound was worth $500 a year. The pitch was simple. Unlock the city. Billy promised exclusive access, private galas, fashion week after parties, front row tickets to Hamilton. He was selling access. That he didn't have. When members requested tickets, Billy didn't use a special connection. He literally went on StubHub, bought the tickets at a loss, and resold them to members just to keep the illusion alive. And when he ran out of money, he simply stopped answering emails. The system is down. The concierge is busy. He didn't have the tickets. He just had the audacity. Most people would call this a failure. Billy called it a pivot. Magnises wasn't a business. It was a practice run. It taught him a dangerous lesson. You don't need a product to get investment. You just need hype. If you can make people feel important, they will ignore the red flags. They will ignore the math. And they will hand you their money. Magnises eventually collapsed. But Billy didn't stop. He aimed higher. He found a new partner, a famous rapper, and he found a new product. Not a card, but an island. Enter Ja Rule, the hip-hop legend, the voice of a generation. Billy wasn't just a tech CEO anymore. He was hanging out with rap stars. He was flying on private jets. For a kid who was bullied in high school, this was the ultimate validation. They came up with an idea. The Fyre app. Uber for booking celebrities. You want Drake at your birthday party? Swipe right. To launch the app, they needed a party. Not just a party. A festival. Something the world had never seen before. Marketing is usually about convincing you to buy a product. Fyre was about convincing you to buy a lifestyle. They hired the fire starters: Kendall Jenner, Bella Hadid, Emily Ratajkowski, Hailey Bieber. Kendall Jenner was reportedly paid $250,000 for a single photo, an orange square. This was the weaponization of FOMO, fear of missing out. If the most beautiful, rich, and famous people are going, you have to go too, or you are nobody. They shot a promotional video on Norman's Cay, Pablo Escobar's former private island. It looked like heaven: blue water, swimming pigs, beautiful women. But here is the catch. They didn't own the island. In fact, they were kicked off the island shortly after filming because Billy promoted the Pablo Escobar connection, which the owners explicitly forbade. So they had sold thousands of tickets to an island that they were already banned from. But they didn't stop selling. They just moved the location to a parking lot on a different island. And they didn't tell a soul. This is where optimism becomes delusion. Billy genuinely believed he could pull it off. He ignored the logistics experts. He ignored the weather reports. He ignored the math. Let's just do it and be legends, man. That was his motto. He wasn't building a festival. He was building a cult of personality. And like all cults, it works perfectly. Until the Kool-Aid runs out. April 27th, 2017. The guests arrived. They were expecting luxury SUVs to whisk them away to private villas. Instead, they were met by yellow school buses, dusty, hot, and crowded. They were driven not to a private beach, but to a construction site. The Exuma experience was actually a gravel lot next to a sandals resort. The mood shifted from excitement to confusion, and then to dread. And then they saw the villas. They were not geometric geodesic domes. They were FEMA tents, disaster relief tents. The kind used for refugees after a hurricane. Unfinished, unfurnished, soaked in rain. There was no electricity. There was no running water. The luxury mattresses were just soaking wet foam pads thrown onto the muddy grass. It wasn't Coachella. It was a refugee camp for rich kids. The promised gourmet catering by Steven Starr vanished. Instead, guests received a styrofoam box. Inside, 2 slices of bread, 2 slices of cheese, and a side of sadness. That photo went viral instantly. It became the symbol of the entire festival. The moment the world realized the dream was dead, but the worst was yet to come. Night fell, and the lights didn't turn on. Panic set in. It turned into Lord of the Flies. People began looting tents, fighting over dry mattresses, hoarding toilet paper, stealing alcohol to numb the fear. There was no security, no staff. Billy McFarland had vanished into a nearby house, leaving thousands of people stranded on a dark island with no way out. The Great Exuma adventure had become a hostage situation. Getting off the island was harder than getting on. The next morning, the airport was a war zone. Flights were canceled. The government locked the terminal doors. Hundreds of dehydrated, hungover, and angry influencers were trapped in a tiny room with no air conditioning. They had paid thousands for VIP treatment. Now, they were fighting for a bottle of warm water. The dream had officially turned into a hostage crisis. Back in New York, the FBI was waiting. They uncovered a fraud so brazen, it was almost impressive. Billy hadn't just mismanaged money. He had invented it. He showed investors fake bank statements. He claimed Fyre Media was making millions. In reality, it was making less than a lemonade stand. He used money from new investors to pay back old investors. It was a classic Ponzi scheme. wrapped in a glossy Instagram filter. But here is the most shocking part. While out on bail, waiting for his trial, Billy did it again. He started a new scam called NYC for IP Access. He emailed the same victims from Fyre Festival, offering them tickets to the Met Gala, Burning Man, Coachella, tickets that, once again, he did not have. Most people would be preparing for prison. Billy was preparing his next hustle. He isn't just a criminal. He is pathological. He physically cannot stop lying. Billy was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison. He was ordered to pay $26 million in restitution. But the real tragedy wasn't the rich kids who ate a cheese sandwich. They got their money back from credit card companies. They got a story to tell at parties. The real victims were the people of Exuma, the construction workers, the restaurant owners like Marianne Roll, who drained their life savings to feed and build for Billy, and were left with nothing. No refund, just empty promises and a ruined island. In 2022, Billy McFarland was released from prison. Did he apologize? Did he fade into obscurity? No. He started a TikTok account, and believe it or not, he announced Fyre Festival II. Same name, same promise, and no lineup. And the scariest part? The first batch of 100 tickets sold out instantly. Why? Why would anyone trust this man again? Because Fyre Festival wasn't a music festival. It was a status symbol. Even the disaster itself became a status symbol. Being a fire survivor is now a badge of honor on Instagram. Billy McFarland understands the modern world better than we do. He knows that we are addicted to attention. We don't care if the luxury is real. We only care if it looks real on camera. He sells the one thing money usually can't buy: relevance. The lesson of Fyre Festival isn't about checking the weather report. It's about checking your ego. Social media is a hall of mirrors. Influencers are paid actors. And that orange square on your feed isn't an invitation to a party. It's a trapdoor. The next time someone promises you a private island for the price of an iPhone. Remember the cheese sandwich? We peel back the layers of the perfect life to show you the rot underneath. If you enjoyed this expose, hit subscribe on Dark Focus. Share this video with a friend who has FOMO. And stay safe out there. The sharks aren't in the water. They are in the boardroom.